The galaxy had always belonged to others. Long before humans touched the stars, empires rose and fell among the endless void. The most powerful of them all were the Valari, a proud, ruthless species with ships as vast as cities and weapons that could shatter moons. They spread their banners across spiral arms, enslaving weaker species and forcing others into submission. For generations, no one dared to challenge them. To the Valari, humans were nothing more than an afterthought. Earth was a small blue world on the edge of the Orion Arm, insignificant compared to the grand capitals of the galaxy. When humanity first arrived at the Council of Worlds, they were treated with polite smiles and silent mockery. "Fragile," whispered the towering Xylan, their crystalline bodies glowing faintly. "Loud, reckless, undisciplined," muttered the insectoid Rinkar, their mandibles clicking. "They will break under the weight of real war," said the Valari, their silver eyes shining with cruel certainty. And so, humanity was dismissed. They were given scraps of territory, scraps of influence, scraps of respect. Their fleets were small, their technology younger than most species could remember. In the great games of power, Earth was a child playing among giants. But humanity had something the others did not see: memory. They remembered the centuries of war on Earth, the endless struggle against nature, against each other, against the odds. They remembered that survival was not about strength alone, but about will. Commander Kalen Voss carried this memory deep in his heart. He had been a child when humanity first joined the Alliance. He remembered standing with his father, watching alien warships glide across the skies of Mars during the welcoming parade. They looked like gods then, perfect, untouchable. He remembered how his father had clenched his jaw and whispered, "Never bow too low, Kalen. One day they will see what humans can do." Years passed, and Kalen rose through the ranks of Earth's small fleet. He was sharp, disciplined, and calm under fire. Yet no matter what he achieved, the Valari and their allies never saw him as more than a nuisance. In meetings, they ignored his words. In councils, they silenced his warnings. But Kalen was not blind. He saw the cracks forming in the Valari's empire. He saw the arrogance that made them careless, the cruelty that made them hated. And deep, in the hidden shipyards of Earth, Luna, and the asteroid belt, he began to prepare. Humanity did not build fleets to parade in the stars like the Valari. They built in silence, in shadow. Old mining ships were reforged into warcraft. Freighters became carriers. Outdated hulls were strengthened with Earthborn alloys tougher than alien steel. Human engineers worked with desperation, with creativity, with the knowledge that they could not match the Valari in numbers, but they could outthink them. This secret project became known only among a few as the Armada of Shadows. While the Valari celebrated another century of dominion, humans trained in the darkness. Pilots learned to fly through asteroid storms where no alien dared. Soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity, using speed instead of strength. Strategists studied alien battles, searching for flaws in their so-called perfect war machines. One of them was Mira Chen, a strategist whose calm voice carried the weight of fire. She saw patterns where others saw chaos, finding weaknesses in even the strongest defenses. Another was Rylan Kale, a reckless pilot with nerves of steel who could dance his ship between plasma bolts like a phantom. Together, under Kalen's command, they became the heart of the Armada. The galaxy, meanwhile, forgot humanity. The Council dismissed them as background noise. Even when whispers of rebellion spread across enslaved worlds, no one looked to Earth. No one imagined that the forgotten children of a small blue planet could matter. But Kalen knew the truth. "They call us fragile," he told his crew one night as their ships floated silently in the shadow of a gas giant. His voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. "They call us reckless. They call us weak, but fragility teaches us to endure. Recklessness teaches us to adapt. Weakness teaches us to fight harder. Everything they mock is what will make us strong. His crew listened, their faces lit by the soft glow of the stars. Some felt fear, others felt fire. In that silence, in that endless night, something unbreakable was born. The day finally came when the Valari turned their gaze toward Earth. A massive Valari fleet descended upon the Sol system, their ships casting shadows across the planets. Their message echoed across every human channel, cold and merciless. Kneel or be erased. The alliance of other species bowed quickly, urging humanity to surrender. To them, it was already over. Humanity was a candle against a storm. But Kalen Voss stood on the command deck of the hidden flagship Erebus, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes fixed on the invading Armada. For years, humanity had waited, endured, and prepared. They had built their strength not in the light, but in the dark, where no empire dared to look. And now, as the stars trembled with the arrival of their conquerors, the Armada of shadows began to rise. The Valari fleet hung over the Sol system like a storm of blades. Their ships were colossal, each one shaped like a dark crescent, glowing with rivers of molten energy. They blocked the sun in their shadow, and their arrival sent waves of terror. Across every human colony, from Earth to Mars, from the mining stations of the Belt to the domes of Luna, humanity watched in silence as the invaders announced their claim. To most, it felt like the end had already come. But in the darkness near Jupiter's moons, hidden beneath layers of radiation storms, the Armada of shadows waited. Commander Kalen Voss stood on the bridge of the Erebus. The air hummed with tension as the crew prepared for their first true battle. Around him, ships lay cloaked by stealth fields, their hulls black against the void. Each ship was a miracle of human persistence, patched together from fragments, yet deadly in design. "Report," Kalen said, his voice calm though his chest burned with fire. "Valari fleet is advancing," replied Mira Chen, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Her tone was steady, but the faint tremor in her hands betrayed the weight of the moment. 30 war cruisers, 5 dreadnoughts, countless fighters. They are moving straight toward Earth. The crew fell silent. Even the bravest felt the crushing presence of numbers. Humanity's fleet was small, barely 50 ships. Each one carried the hopes of billions. "Commander," said Rylan Kale, leaning against his pilot's chair with a reckless grin that hid his fear. 50 against 50,000. I like the odds." A few nervous laughs broke the silence. Kalen allowed himself the smallest smile. Ryland's words were not bravado alone. They were a spark, a reminder of why they fought. "Remember this," Kalen said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "The Valari believe we are weak. They think we will scatter. Today we prove them wrong. Today humanity shows the galaxy what it means to endure." The battle began with a storm of light. The Valari unleashed their first barrage, plasma beams that tore through space, white-hot and merciless. Entire asteroids vaporized in seconds. The void shook with explosions. "Shields up!" Mira shouted. The Erebus shuddered as the first wave struck. Human ships twisted and spun, darting into asteroid fields where Valari ships hesitated to follow. "Formation! Sigma!" Kalen commanded. The Armada of shadows broke apart into scattered groups, each moving unpredictably. The Valari commanders sneered. To them it looked like panic. They had seen this before, weak prey scattering before the predator. But they did not see the trap. Ryland's fighter squadron sped ahead, weaving between asteroids with impossible precision. His voice crackled over comms. "Come on, you metal bastards! Chase me!" Valari interceptors followed, sleek and burning, firing plasma bolts that lit the darkness like falling stars. Rylan led them deeper into the belt, where human ships had placed hidden mines, scraps of old technology, re-engineered into deadly electromagnetic snares. One by one, Valari fighters hit the traps. Explosions rippled through the field. Entire squadrons vanished in sudden bursts of fire. "Target neutralized!" Ryland cheered, pulling his ship into a sharp roll. "That's for calling us fragile." On the Erebus, Mira activated the next phase. Now, dozens of human warships revealed themselves, rising from the shadows. Railguns roared, sending slugs of tungsten at near-light speed. Unlike plasma, these weapons were brutally simple, but devastating. The slugs pierced Valari shields, tearing holes into hulls that had never faced such kinetic fury. A Valari warcruiser broke apart, its molten core spilling into space. For the first time in centuries, a Valari commander shouted in disbelief, "They bleed us!" The Valari counterattacked. Their dreadnoughts unleashed sunspears, massive beams that carved through the belt, obliterating whole clusters of rock. Human ships were caught in the fire. The Horizon Dawn, one of the oldest carriers, erupted into flames. Hundreds of lives were lost in a heartbeat. On the bridge of the Erebus, silence fell as the ship's name flickered out on the tactical screen. Faces went pale. Kalen's jaw tightened. He felt the weight of every soul lost, but he could not falter. "Hold the line," he said, voice like steel. "Every sacrifice brings us closer." As the battle raged, Mira saw the enemy's flaw. "Their dreadnought shields cycle between bursts. They are vulnerable for 6 seconds every recharge." 6 seconds? Ryland's laugh came sharp through comms. "Plenty of time." Human squadrons dove at impossible angles. While Valari ships moved with precision, humans flew with instinct, with madness, with courage born from desperation. They struck in those 6 seconds, slamming railgun fire into the dreadnought's heart. One, then another, then a third dreadnought, collapsed, torn apart in eruptions of fire. The galaxy had not seen such a sight in centuries, Valari titans falling to a people they had dismissed as weak. But victory was not yet theirs. The Valari fleet was still vast, and the Armada of Shadows was bleeding. Ships cracked, shields failed, and oxygen alarms echoed across decks. Every second was survival. On the bridge, Mira whispered, almost to herself, "If we fall here, humanity is finished." Kalen heard her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and unyielding. "Then we do not fall." His eyes burned as he looked upon the stars filled with fire. In that moment, the commander of a forgotten people became the voice of resistance. For the entire galaxy, the first clash did not end in total victory. The Valari pulled back, regrouping, their arrogance shaken but not destroyed. The battlefield was a graveyard of wrecks, human and Valari alike. The Erebus floated among the debris, scarred but alive. Humanity had survived their first true test. More than that, they had shown the impossible. The Valari were not invincible, and, as word spread across the galaxy, whispers began to rise among the enslaved and the fearful. Whispers of humans who fought with fire, who dared to stand against the Empire. For the first time in living memory, the stars held a new promise. Humanity had drawn blood. The wreckage of the first great battle drifted across the stars like ghosts. Broken hulls spun silently, fragments of both human and Valari ships painting the void with scars of fire. For the first time in centuries, the Valari had been forced to retreat. But victory came at a price. The Armada of Shadows was bruised, bleeding, and low on resources. Thousands of human lives had been lost, and every surviving ship carried wounds that could not be easily repaired. Commander Kalen Voss stood on the Erebus's bridge, staring at the tactical display. Green icons, human ships, blinked weakly, Among the sea of red wreckage, the silence in the command deck was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of failing systems. "They know us now," Kalen said quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "The Valari will not underestimate us again." Mira Chen folded her arms, her face pale but resolute. "And when they return, it won't be with 30 ships. It will be with 300. Rylan, Kale, ever restless, slammed a fist against the console. "Then let them come. We'll bleed them again." But even his reckless grin could not hide the truth. Humanity's shadow fleet could not survive another clash of that scale. The call from the Galactic Council arrived only hours later. A shimmering hologram filled the bridge, showing the towering figures of alien leaders. Their expressions ranged from cold to cautious. Chancellor Valek of the Rin Kar, his mandibles twitching in disdain, was the first to speak. "Humans, you've brought destruction upon us all. The Valari will not forgive this defiance. Their wrath will burn across every system." "They were already burning the galaxy," Kalen replied sharply. "You mistake silence for safety. We showed the truth. They can be hurt. That means they can be defeated." But the council chamber erupted in murmurs of fear. Some species nodded with respect, but most lowered their eyes. The Alliance was bound in chains of terror, too used to bending the knee. Finally, the Valari emissary appeared, tall, silver-skinned, and gleaming with cold light. His voice cut through the council like a blade. "Humanity has violated the ancient order. For this, their world will be purged. But the rest of you need not suffer. Deliver us their fleet. Deliver us Kalen Voss. Submit, and you will be spared." The chamber grew silent. The choice hung heavy. Kalen saw it in their faces. Fear, weakness, betrayal. Later, within the quiet strategy room of the Erebus, Mira slammed her datapad on the table. "They're going to hand us over. The Council will sacrifice humanity to save themselves." Kalen closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped for courage, but he knew fear was stronger in most hearts. "Then we are alone," he said. Rylan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We've always been alone. Doesn't change a damn thing." The crew fell into silence. For a moment, despair hovered over them like a shadow. How could a small, wounded fleet stand against the full fury of the Valari Empire, alone, without allies, without support? It was then that Kalen spoke again, his voice low but steady. "Alone is how humanity has always survived. From deserts, from storms, from wars. We endured when no one believed in us. This is no different." Mira looked at him, her eyes glistening. "But Kalen, if the Council betrays us, if they deny us ports and supplies, we will starve in the dark." "Then we take what we need," Kalen replied firmly. "Not to conquer, but to endure. And when the Valari return, we'll be ready." Days later, the betrayal revealed itself fully. On the mining colony of Vera 4, human supply ships were denied entry by Council patrols. "By order of the Council," the alien commander announced coldly, "your fleet is to be disarmed. Surrender, and you may live." The humans refused. Shots were fired. The supply convoy barely escaped. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer simply ignored. They were hunted. But the Armada of Shadows was not built on trust in others. It was built on desperation, on resourcefulness, on unity. Across the asteroid belts, human engineers worked day and night, tearing apart wrecks from the last battle, salvaging alien weapons, turning ruins into new strength. Rylan flew daring. Raids against Valari patrols, stealing fuel and supplies, laughing even as plasma bolts scorched his wings. "Catch me if you can," he taunted, leading enemy fighters into traps again and again. Mira coordinated secret strikes, teaching smaller colonies how to fight back, how to sabotage Valari shipments. One spark, she told them, can light a fire that spreads across the stars. And Kalen carried the weight of all of it. Every name of the fallen, every cry of the wounded, every whisper of doubt. At night, alone in his quarters, he stared at the stars and wondered if his father had been wrong. But when dawn cycle came, he stood tall again, because he knew billions looked to him as their last hope. One evening, Mira joined him on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, beautiful and cruel. "They will come soon," she said softly. "Yes," Kalen answered, "and we may not survive." Kalen turned to her, his face calm, his eyes burning with quiet fire. "Then we'll make sure the galaxy remembers that we tried, that we stood when all others knelt." Mira's gaze lingered on him, her heart heavy yet filled with pride. For the first time, she truly believed that even in defeat, humanity would leave a mark. No empire could erase. The Valari were preparing their next move. The Council was already bending the knee, but far away in hidden corners of the galaxy, whispers spread. Whispers of humans who had stood against the conquerors. Whispers of shadows rising in defiance. The Council may betray them. The Valari may try to destroy them. But humanity had already lit a flame, and flames, once born, have a way of spreading. The Valari did not wait long. After their first retreat, they returned with fury. A fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries emerged from hyperspace. Hundreds of war cruisers, dreadnoughts glowing with molten light, and carriers that released endless swarms of fighters. Their arrival shook the stars themselves. From every world under Valari rule, fear spread like a shadow. For the enslaved, it was a reminder of power. For the free, it was a warning of doom. For humanity, it was a promise of annihilation. The Council, desperate to save themselves, sent a message to the Erebus. "Stand down," Chancellor Valek hissed. His mandibles clicked in irritation. "You cannot face this armada. If you resist, you doom us all. Surrender, and perhaps the Valari will spare your world." On the bridge, Kalen Voss listened in silence. His crew waited, their breaths held, their hearts heavy. Then Kalen's answer came, sharp as steel. "We do not kneel, not now, not ever." The transmission cut. Mira Chen's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "If we face them head-on, we are finished. We need something else." And in that silence, her mind began to turn. She studied the maps, the fleet movements, the natural hazards of nearby systems. Then her gaze fell on a dying star at the edge of Alliance space, Arion, a massive sun in its final days, unstable and ready to collapse. "Commander," she whispered, her hand hovering over the star. "This is where we fight." Kalen looked at her, then at the blazing, unstable star. "Arion will collapse any cycle now." "Exactly," Mira replied. Her voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. "We lure them there. We bait them with everything we have. When the star collapses, the blast will consume their fleet." The room fell silent. It was madness. A supernova could annihilate everything, Valari and human alike. Ryland Kyle, who had been leaning against the wall, raised his brow. "So, to survive, we dive into the jaws of a dying sun?" Mira met his eyes. "To survive, we use the jaws to bite our enemy." For a moment, even Kalen said nothing. The weight of the plan pressed against his mind. To risk everything, every ship, every life, on the unstable fury of a star. But slowly he nodded. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "If we are to die, let it be in fire they will never forget." The Armada of shadows gathered at Arion. Human ships drifted in silence, hiding behind shattered moons and debris. Their hulls groaned under strain. Their crews whispered prayers to old gods. Some wept quietly, others sharpened their focus into cold resolve. Kalen walked among them, speaking to soldiers, pilots, and engineers. His words were simple but heavy. We fight not for glory, not for conquest. We fight for home, for Earth, for every child who deserves to see the stars free. Stand with me, and no matter what happens, history will remember that humanity did not bow. His voice carried across the fleet. Fear did not vanish, but courage grew from it, and courage was enough. When the Valari Armada arrived, the void shook. Their ships spread across the system, a tide of power and arrogance. Their commander sneered as he saw the scattered human fleet. Pathetic, he said. End them quickly. Valari warships advanced, sun spears charging, but Kalen gave the order. Phase 1. Now. Human ships broke formation, darting toward the star. Their movements looked desperate, like prey fleeing toward certain death. The Valari laughed and followed, chasing them deeper into the unstable system. Rylan led his squadron straight into the raging storms around the dying sun. Plasma arcs lashed out like lightning, tearing at shields and frying instruments. Yet the human pilots flew with madness in their veins. Weaving through chaos, the Valari dared not enter. "Closer!" Rylan shouted through comms. "Pull them! Closer!" The Valari ships pursued, firing wildly. They did not realize they were being pulled into the trap. Mira's eyes never left the tactical map. Her fingers danced across controls as she monitored the star's instability. The readings spiked higher and higher. "It's ready," she whispered. "One push more." Kalen gave the final command. "All units, decoys now." Dozens of false signals ignited across the system. Holographic fleets, designed from scraps and radiation, appeared like an armada 10 times humanity's size. The Valari sensors screamed with false alarms. Their commanders, blinded by arrogance, ordered their entire fleet into the star's gravity. Well, to crush what they thought was resistance. That was the last mistake they ever made. The star collapsed. Light exploded brighter than 1,000 suns. Space itself seemed to scream as the supernova tore through the void. The Valari fleet was caught in its jaws. Dreadnoughts cracked open, war cruisers melted into streams of molten fire, and carriers vanished in the blast. The conquerors, the so-called gods of the galaxy, were annihilated in seconds. Human ships struggled desperately to escape. Engines burned beyond their limits. Hulls cracked as shockwaves slammed into them. Many were lost. Entire squadrons vanished, swallowed by the star's fury. On the Erebus, alarms blared. The bridge shook violently, panels sparking, crew screaming. Mira clung to her console, shouting readings. Rylan's voice cracked through comms, half laughter, half terror. "We're not dead yet." Kalen gripped the command chair, every muscle straining. "Hold together. Just a little longer." The Erebus burst from the storm, battered, aflame, but alive. Behind it, only fire remained. Silence followed. Silence, and the distant glow of a dead star. The Armada of Shadows had survived, barely, but the Valari fleet, the invincible armada that had ruled for centuries, was gone. Kalen stood, bruised and bleeding, yet unbroken. He looked at his crew, at Mira's exhausted face, at Rylan's grin despite the burns on his suit. And he whispered, almost to himself, "They thought us fragile. They thought us weak. But humanity endures. Humanity fights. Humanity burns brighter than any star." And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread faster than fire. Whispers of a people who had stood against an empire and won. The Aryan system was silent. Where once a star had burned, now only ashes and fragments remained. The Valari fleet, the greatest force the galaxy had ever known, was gone, consumed in the fire of the dying sun. For the first time in centuries, the shadow of their empire had cracked. But the cost was heavy. Human ships drifted, scarred and broken. Hulls leaked air, engines coughed sparks. Entire decks had been lost to the fury of the collapse. Families wept for the voices that would never answer again. The Armada of Shadows had survived, but it had been carved down to less than half its size. On the bridge of the Erebus, silence reigned. Crew members worked with trembling hands, patching failing systems, carrying the wounded, counting the dead. The air was thick with smoke and sorrow. Commander Kalen Voss stood in the center, his uniform torn, blood streaking his temple. His voice was low, steady, though every word carried the weight of grief. "Transmit the names," he said. "Every ship, every soul. Let Earth know who stood here. Let the galaxy know what was paid." Mira Chen entered the names one by one, her fingers shaking. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept going. She knew each name mattered. Each name was a flame. Rylan Kale sat slumped in his chair. His usual grin faded. For once he was quiet, staring at the void outside the window. After a long silence, he muttered, "We won, and still, it feels like we lost." Kalen turned toward him. His eyes were tired, but they still burned with purpose. "We did not lose, Rylan. They tried to erase us. Instead, we stand. That is victory enough." News of the battle spread across the stars like wildfire. On distant worlds where people lived under Valari chains, whispers turned into roars. The humans fought them. The humans destroyed their fleet. The Valari are not invincible. For the first time in centuries, hope returned. Rebellions sparked on forgotten planets. Slaves raised stolen weapons. Citizens looked to the skies and dared to dream of freedom. But within the halls of the Galactic Council, the reaction was far colder. The alien leaders gathered in their grand chamber, a place of towering pillars and glowing light. Fear hung in the air. The Valari emissary, silver-skinned and furious, stood in silence. His empire had been wounded, but not broken. The loss of their fleet was a humiliation they would not forget. Chancellor Valek of the Rin-Kar clicked his mandibles nervously. "The humans are dangerous. Their actions endanger us all. If the Valari turn their wrath upon us, no shield will hold." Others murmured in agreement, their voices shaking. Instead of celebrating humanity's courage, they feared the price of defiance. Finally, the Valari emissary spoke, his voice cold as ice. "Deliver us, the humans. Deliver us, Kalen Voss. Do this, and your worlds will be spared." The chamber fell into silence. The choice was clear. Betray humanity, or face Valari wrath. Back on the Erebus, Kalen received reports of the Council's debates. Mira's face darkened as she read the intercepted transmissions. "They're preparing to turn on us," she said. "Even after everything, they still fear the Valari more than they believe in us." Rylan spat in disgust. "Cowards! They hide behind words while we bleed." Kalen said nothing for a long time. He gazed out at the wreckage floating in the dark. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, the fire that had consumed an empire's pride. Then finally, he spoke. "Let them betray us. It changes nothing. We never fought for their approval. We fought for humanity, and for every soul who refuses to bow." Mira's eyes softened. There was sorrow in them, but also pride. "And what now, Commander?" Kalen straightened, his voice calm and unwavering. "Now, we prepare for what comes next. The Valari will strike again. Harder, stronger. But next time, we will not stand alone." He was right, for even as the Council wavered, others had begun to rise. On the water world of Theros, enslaved workers rose against their Valari, masters wielding stolen plasma rifles. On the desert planet Kalros, secret messages spread. Humanity fights, humanity resists, On shattered colonies, survivors painted the human flag across broken walls, declaring that if Earth could defy the conquerors, so could they. Hope was no longer a whisper. It was a fire, and it was spreading fast. Yet Kalen knew the danger was far from over. The Velari would never forgive the humiliation of Arion. They would return with greater fury, with weapons beyond imagination. And the Council, bound by fear, might stand against humanity instead of beside them. Still, as Kalen walked the damaged decks of the Erebus, listening to the quiet voices of his people, he felt something stronger than fear. He saw wounded engineers, refusing to rest, patching broken systems with bloodied hands. He saw pilots preparing for the next battle, even when their ships were half broken. He saw children in the infirmary drawing stars on the walls, whispering, "We're still here." It was in those small acts of defiance that Kalen understood the truth. Humanity's strength was not its weapons or its ships. It was the fire in its heart, the refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. That night, Kalen stood once more on the observation deck. The wreckage drifted silently, glowing faintly in the distance. Mira joined him, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if all this is worth it? If survival costs too much?" Kalen looked at her, then at the endless dark beyond. His voice was quiet, but filled with unshakable resolve. "Every life lost hurts. Every battle scars us. But if we stop fighting, if we surrender, then everything we are is erased. We fight not because it is easy. We fight because it is the only way to remain human." Mira nodded, her heart heavy but steady. And in the silence of that broken system, beneath the gaze of shattered stars, humanity stood, scarred, grieving, but unbroken. The Velari would come again. The Council would betray them, but humanity was ready, and the galaxy had begun to believe. The Velari never forgave humiliation. Weeks after the destruction of their fleet in the Arion system, their revenge began to take shape. From the heart of their empire came whispers of a new weapon, something greater than fleets, greater than armies. A weapon not built to conquer, but to erase. The galaxy trembled as fragments of truth leaked out. Worlds whispered its name with dread: the Nullfire. It was said the weapon could strip life from a planet in a single breath, leaving only silence and dust. No shields could block it. No walls could resist it. The Velari had forged a blade to strike fear into every corner of the stars. On the human flagship Erebus, the crew listened in silence as Mira Chen read the reports aloud. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "They tested it on a colony in the Outer Rim," she said. 30,000 lives, gone in seconds. Not even ruins remain, just dust and glass." The bridge was silent. Rylan Kale clenched his fists so tightly, his knuckles turned white. His usual smirk was gone, replaced with a storm in his eyes. 30,000 people, he muttered, and the Council will still bow to them. Commander Kalen Voss stood, tall at the center, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. His face was calm, but inside he felt the weight of every lost life pressing on his chest. He turned slowly to his crew. "This is no longer about survival," he said. "This is about existence itself. If they unleash that weapon freely, no world is safe. Not Earth, not any of us." The Council met in secret, but nothing stayed secret for long. Their decision was what Kalen had feared. The alien leaders, shaking in fear of Velari wrath, had chosen a path of betrayal. They planned to hand over humanity's coordinates, to sacrifice Earth in exchange for their own safety. When Mira intercepted the transmission, her eyes filled with fury. "They're selling us out," she whispered. "The Council is preparing to deliver our home like an offering." Ryland slammed his hand against the console. Cowards! They think if they feed us to the fire, it won't burn them. But the Valari will never stop at one world." Kalen's voice was steady, but there was steel beneath it. "Then we act before they can. If Earth is their target, we must draw the fire away." Humanity was outnumbered. Their ships were scarred, their supplies thin. And yet, in the hidden bases scattered across asteroid belts and icy moons, the Armada of shadows still burned with defiance. Engineers worked day and night, patching ships, with scrap and forging weapons from ruins. Kalen gathered his captains in the war chamber. A holographic map of the galaxy glowed before them. At its center pulsed the symbol of the Valari weapon, moving closer to human space. "They believe fear will make us bow?" Kalen said. His voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. "They believe our spirit can be broken, but we will show them what it means to be human." Mira leaned forward. "We cannot destroy their weapon by force. It is too strong. But we can outsmart it." Kalen nodded. "Exactly. If the Valari's power is absolute, then their arrogance is our weapon. We will give them a target they cannot resist, and when they strike, we will turn their fire against them." Rylan raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we bait the beast?" Kalen's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Yes, and humanity has always been very good at baiting beasts." The trap was set. In the dead void near the shattered rings of Caloris, the Armada gathered. Scarred cruisers, half-repaired destroyers, even freighters armed with scavenged cannons. Every vessel humanity could muster drifted in the shadows. They broadcast a single message into the stars. "We are here. Come and finish what you began." And the Valari answered. The darkness split as their ships emerged, sleek and terrible, their weapons glowing like burning suns. At their heart was the null fire itself, a colossal vessel bristling with impossible energy. It moved with the silence of death, its core pulsing like the heart of a dying star. The galaxy held its breath. On the bridge of the Erebus, the crew watched the monstrosity approach. Rylan muttered, "It's bigger than I imagined." Mira whispered, "And deadlier." Kalen only stood still, eyes fixed on the glowing heart of the weapon. His voice was steady. "Remember why we fight. Not for glory, not for power, but for every child who still dreams beneath the stars." The crew straightened. Fear still burned in their eyes, but alongside it now burned resolve. The Valari commander's voice echoed across the void, cold and merciless. "Humans, your defiance ends here. Watch as your fleet vanishes in silence." The null fire began to glow. Energy gathered, brighter, brighter still, until it outshone the stars. The weapon was moments from firing. Kalen's hand tightened on the command chair. "Now!" he ordered. From the shadows of the rings, hidden ships sprang to life. Massive reflectors, hastily built from mined crystal and stolen alloys, shifted into position. They formed a broken mirror across the void. The null fire unleashed its fury. A beam of pure destruction tore across space, aimed directly at the human fleet. But instead of striking, the beam struck the mirrored field. The void blazed with light as the fire bent, refracted, and turned, redirected back toward the Valari Armada. For a single heartbeat, silence. Then the stars themselves seemed to scream. The Nullfire's own blast tore through its escorts, shredding ships like paper. The weapon's core flared, overloaded by its own power. The monstrous vessel trembled, cracked, and in a blinding eruption it shattered. The Valari's greatest weapon had destroyed itself. On the bridge of the Erebus, stunned silence fell. The crew stared in disbelief as the light faded, leaving only wreckage behind. Rylan let out a sharp laugh, half relief, half madness. "By the stars, we did it." We actually did it. Mira's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. Thousands of lives avenged, countless worlds saved. Kalen's voice was quiet, heavy with both sorrow and triumph. This battle is won, but the war is not over. The Valari will come again, and so will we. And in that moment, beneath the dying glow of a weapon meant to erase them, humanity stood tall, scarred, outnumbered, but unbroken. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. The weakest species had turned the might of an empire against itself. For the first time in history, the Valari bled, and humanity was no longer just a whisper in the dark. The smoke of victory had barely settled when the shadow of betrayal returned. News spread quickly across the galaxy. The Nullfire, the Valari's weapon of extinction, had been destroyed. Whispers echoed in marketplaces and starports, in mines, and palaces. Everywhere the same truth was spoken. Humanity had done the impossible, but where some celebrated, others trembled. In the chambers of the Galactic Council, alien delegates spoke in hushed tones. Their voices carried fear, envy, and resentment. The humans had turned defeat into triumph, yet instead of gratitude, suspicion grew like a poison. "They are dangerous," hissed the Karen Prime Minister, his scales glimmering faintly under the Council's lights. "Did you not see what they accomplished? They tricked the Valari's greatest weapon. If they can do that, what else can they do? What if they turn their cunning against us?" Another voice, high and sharp, followed. "They are too unpredictable. They do not know limits. If we do not act now, humanity may become the next threat to the Alliance." The decision was made in shadows, far from human ears. Humanity, once dismissed as weak, was now marked as dangerous. On the flagship Erebus, the crew celebrated with quiet relief. They had risked everything and survived. For a moment, laughter filled the halls and the weight of war lifted. But Kalen Voss felt no peace. Standing on the observation deck, he stared at the wreckage drifting among the stars. His reflection in the glass looked older than he remembered, his eyes tired but unyielding. Rylan joined him, leaning casually against the railing, though his voice was serious. "You should enjoy this, Commander. We just pulled off the greatest trick in galactic history." Kalen shook his head. "The Valari will not forgive this. And the Council—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "The Council fears us now. That fear may be more dangerous than the Valari themselves." Rylan frowned. "You think they'd turn on us? After what we just did?" Kalen's silence was answer enough. The betrayal came in the form of a message. Mira Chen was the first to intercept it. Her face went pale as she read the transmission. The Council had declared humanity a destabilizing force. The Erebus and the Shadow Armada were branded as rogue. Any world that offered sanctuary to humans would face sanctions, or worse. "They've exiled us," Mira whispered, her hands trembling around the datapad. "After everything we sacrificed, they've cast us out." Rylan exploded with anger. "Exiled! We saved their worlds. We saved their children, and this is how they repay us?" He slammed his fist against the console so hard sparks flew. "Cowards!" Kalen read the words in silence, the fire in his chest growing colder with every line. Then he looked up at his crew. "They've chosen fear over truth," he said quietly. "To them we are no longer allies. We are outcasts." The Armada gathered to hear the news. Soldiers, engineers, pilots, men and women who had given everything for this cause. Kalen stood before them in the great hangar bay, his voice steady though the weight of betrayal pressed down on him. "The Council has abandoned us," he said. "They call us dangerous. They call us reckless. They fear what we may become." A murmur rippled through the crowd, anger and disbelief mingling. Kalen raised his hand for silence. "But hear me well. We are not defined by their fear. We are defined by our choices. We stand here today not because we were strong, not because we were many, but because we refused to bow. We fight for the right to exist, for every child on earth, for every voice silenced by the Valari. And if the galaxy will not stand with us, then we will stand alone. The hangar erupted in cheers. Voices rose, fierce and unbroken. They had been betrayed, but their spirit was unshaken. Later, in the quiet of the war chamber, Mira spoke softly. If we are outcasts, then we have no safe haven, no ports, no allies. Supplies will run thin. Rylan crossed his arms. We've fought with less. We'll fight with nothing if we have to. Let the council hide behind their walls. We'll do what they're too afraid to do. Kalen looked at them both, his voice steady but heavy with resolve. Then we must be more than survivors. We must be the spark that forces the galaxy to choose. Fear will not be our legacy. Defiance will. The Valari were not blind to the Council's betrayal. Their spies carried the news swiftly back to their leaders. The enemy smiled with cruel satisfaction. Let them tear each other apart, the Valari warlord sneered. The humans have no friends, no protection. When we strike again, no one will come to their aid. But the Valari underestimated one thing, the bond of humanity itself. Days later, the Armada traveled to a hidden moon, one of their last secret outposts. There, in the icy caverns, engineers worked with burning determination. They scavenged every scrap, every fragment of enemy technology they could salvage from the wreck of the Nullfire. Mira stood among them, her eyes glowing with a new vision. "They call us dangerous," she murmured, her voice low but fierce. "Then let us be dangerous. Let us build something the Valari cannot imagine. Let us turn their fear into our strength." Rylan grinned, fire returning to his eyes. "Now that's the spirit. If the Council won't fight with us, then we'll fight for them, and show them why humanity was never meant to kneel." Kalen placed a hand on the icy wall of the cavern, his gaze hard and unyielding. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "The Council betrayed us. The Valari hunt us. But this war isn't over. Not while we still draw breath. Not while humanity still burns." The words carried through the chamber, whispered and repeated, until they grew into a vow. Humanity was no longer a shadow in the galaxy. They were the fire that burned in its darkest corners, and soon the galaxy would learn that betrayal could not break them. The cavern rang with the sound of hammers, sparks, and the steady hum of machines. Deep beneath the frozen crust of the hidden moon, humanity's outcasts worked like firesmiths of old. The air was heavy with sweat and smoke, but also with something far greater, purpose. The betrayal of the Council had struck them like a blade, but instead of breaking, it had hardened their resolve. Here, in the ice and shadow, they built not just weapons, but a future. Mira Chen stood at the heart of the forge, surrounded by glowing screens and schematics that stretched across the cavern walls. Her hands moved quickly over controls, her eyes alive with inspiration. "We have fragments of the Nullfire core," she explained to Kalen and Rylan. "The Valari designed it for destruction, but if we reshape its energy conduits, we could turn it into something else, something powerful enough to burn through their fleets." Rylan whistled, his arms crossed. "You're saying you want to tame the devil's weapon?" Mira smirked, though her voice carried iron. "Not tame, rewrite. If the Valari made fire, then we'll make lightning." Kalen listened silently, his gaze on the broken shards of alien metal laid across the tables. Each fragment hummed faintly, filled with unstable energy. Dangerous, yes, but perhaps salvation lay in that danger. "Do it," he said finally. "If the galaxy has cast us aside, then let us forge our own fate." The days blurred into nights, though no sun rose or fell on the frozen moon. Time was measured only by effort, by the exhaustion in the crew's bones and the hope in their eyes. Engineers welded new frames from scavenged parts. Pilots tested engines in the icy canyons. Scientists risked everything to bend Valari technology into shapes it was never meant to take. In those long hours, bonds deepened. Soldiers became family, tied not just by survival, but by belief. Humanity had been denied allies, yet here in exile they had found something stronger than alliance: unity. One night, as the forge's glow lit the cavern walls, Kalen walked among the workers. He stopped beside a young mechanic named Jarro, barely 20, his hands black with grease. "You should rest," Kalen said gently. Jarro shook his head, his eyes bright with determination. "If I rest, someone else has to carry my share. I won't let them. Not now, not when we're building something that could save Earth." Kalen felt a weight in his chest. These were not trained soldiers, not politicians or lords. They were ordinary humans, mechanics, farmers' sons, miners' daughters, yet they carried the fire of giants. For a moment, Kalen wondered if this was humanity's true weapon. Not technology, not fleets, but this, an unwillingness to surrender, even in the face of betrayal and extinction. Above the frozen moon, the stars glittered cold and distant. But beyond them, war brewed. The Valari prepared their next strike. Their fleets gathered like storms, their warlords eager to crush the upstart humans once and for all. They mocked the Council's cowardice, laughing at how easily the galaxy had abandoned its own defenders. Yet deep within, some Valari leaders felt unease. Reports told of the human Armada, still moving in secret, still alive. Whispers spoke of experiments with forbidden energy. The humans had cheated death before. Who could say they would not do it again? Back in the forge, Mira reached a breakthrough. The chamber shook as the test core ignited for the first time. Blinding light filled the cavern, and arcs of blue energy crawled across the ice. The crew watched with awe as the unstable shards of Valari power bent into controlled streams, channeled through human ingenuity. Mira's voice trembled as she whispered, "It works. It actually works." Rylan grinned, clapping her shoulder. "I don't know what you call it, but I call it hope." Mira smiled faintly. Hope with teeth. They named it the Ether Lance, a weapon not of destruction alone, but of defiance. That night, Kalen gathered the core team in the war chamber. The holographic table glowed with maps of Valari fleet movements. "The Valari think we are broken," he said. "They think exile will starve us. They think fear will silence us. But they are wrong." Rylan leaned forward, his fists on the table. "Then it's time to prove it. We hit them first. Show the galaxy that humanity doesn't hide in the shadows. We strike from them." Mira nodded. "And we use the Ether Lance. Not as a threat, as a message. The Valari wanted fire. We'll give them lightning." Silence followed, heavy with the weight of what they were about to attempt. Then Kalen spoke, his voice steady. "This will not be easy. Many of us may not return. But know this, our fight is not just survival. It is a promise to every child still sleeping under Earth's sky, to every soul who believes we are worth saving. The Council may have betrayed us, but humanity will not betray itself." The crew erupted with agreement. No fear, no hesitation. Their exile had only sharpened their resolve. In the quiet afterward, Kalen stood alone for a moment, staring at the icy cavern ceiling. His breath rose in white clouds. He thought of Earth, of the oceans he had not seen in years, of the people who did not even know their fate hung on the edge of oblivion. He closed his eyes and whispered, "For them, always for them." The forge roared on. Weapons were mounted, engines primed. The Armada stirred like a sleeping giant, preparing to rise once more, and far away, the Volari fleets moved closer, their shadows stretching across the stars. A storm was coming. But this time, humanity would not face it with fear. They would face it with lightning in their hands. The void of space trembled with silence before war. The Volari Armada stretched across the stars like a living storm. Thousands of warships glowed with crimson engines, their black hulls sharp as blades. They had come to finish what they had started, to erase humanity once and for all. At the edge of the system, cloaked in the shadow of a frozen moon, humanity's hidden fleet waited. Once broken, once forgotten, the Armada now pulsed with new life. The ether lances shimmered within their cores, their energy humming with restrained fury. Kalen stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his hands gripping the railing as the stars burned before him. His crew waited in silence, every face drawn tight with both fear and fire. "Are we ready?" Kalen asked softly. Mira Chen's voice carried steady confidence. "The lances are armed. Each one can cut through their largest battleships." Rylan cracked a grin, though his eyes burned with tension. "Then let's make history." The Volari flagship loomed at the heart of their fleet, a colossal fortress bristling with weapons. Inside, Warlord Veyrak sneered as reports poured in. "Human signatures detected," his aide said. "Small fleet. They hide in the moon's shadow." Veyrak laughed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "So the insects dare to crawl from their hole? Crush them! Let the galaxy see how quickly hope burns." The Volari fleet moved like a tidal wave, surging toward the frozen moon. "Enemy approach confirmed," Mira reported. Her voice was calm, but Kalen could see her hands trembling slightly on the console. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Steady. Remember what we've built." She met his eyes, and the tremor stopped. The Resolute's comms opened to the entire Armada. Kalen's voice rang across every human ship. "This is our stand. They think us weak, broken, forgotten. But we are not forgotten. We are forged. We are lightning in the dark. For Earth, for every world that still believes in freedom. Fight!" The Armada roared back, voices mixing in a single defiant cry. And then humanity charged. The first clash was chaos. Volari destroyers surged forward, their beams ripping through the void. Human frigates darted between them, moving faster than expected, striking with precision. Rylan commanded a squadron of fighters, his voice crackling across the comms. "Keep moving! Hit their flanks! Don't give them a target!" Mira unleashed the first ether lance. Blue-white light exploded across space, piercing through a Volari warcruiser like a spear through glass. The massive ship split apart, flames bursting in silence. The Volari froze for a heartbeat. They had never seen their warships destroyed so easily. Ryland's laughter broke across the comms. "Lightning strikes!" But the storm was only beginning. The Volari regrouped, their overwhelming numbers pressing hard. For every Volari ship destroyed, 3 more closed in. Human vessels shuddered under the onslaught. The shields of the Resolute flared, sparks flying across the bridge. "We can't outlast them," Mira warned. "Even with the lances, there are too many." Kalen's jaw tightened. "Then we strike deeper. We cut off the head." His gaze locked on the Volari flagship, Warlord Veyrak's fortress. The Armada shifted course. Every ship, every fighter bent their fury toward the heart of the enemy. Volari defenses thickened, but humans fought with a ferocity the galaxy had never seen. Frigates sacrificed themselves to open paths. Fighters darted like sparks through the black, hammering weak points with precision. On the bridge of the flagship, Veyrak snarled, "Fools! They seek to break me? I will show them what it means to challenge the Volari. His ship unleashed a barrage so powerful it tore 3 human destroyers apart in seconds. Still, the Resolute pushed forward. At the heart of the battle, Kalen gave the final order. "Mira, prepare the core. We end this now." Mira hesitated. Her calculations told her the truth. The ether lance at full power would not only destroy the flagship but also consume the Resolute. Her throat tightened. "If we fire, we don't survive." Kalen's eyes softened, but his voice held steady. "Humanity survives. That's what matters." For a moment, the bridge fell silent. Then Ryland's voice cut through the comms, firm and unwavering. "If he goes down, we all go down together. That's humanity." Tears filled Mira's eyes, but she nodded. "Then let's show them what we are." The Resolute dove through enemy fire, shields shattering, hull burning. The ether lance glowed brighter and brighter until the entire ship seemed made of lightning. "Fire!" Kalen roared. The weapon unleashed, a blinding torrent of energy ripped through space, striking the Valari flagship at its core. The fortress, ship cracked, split, and then exploded in a storm of light that shook the stars. The shockwave ripped through the Valari fleet. Without their leader, their formations faltered, their courage broken. Human ships pressed the advantage, striking with fury. One by one, the Valari fell. When the light faded, silence returned. The Resolute drifted, its systems failing, its crew battered and broken. Mira opened her eyes, her hands still on the console. She whispered, "We did it." Across the comms, voices of survivors cried out, filled with awe and triumph. Humanity had faced the storm and endured. Kalen stood tall, though smoke filled the bridge. He looked out at the shattered Valari fleet, now only wreckage among the stars. "They thought we were shadows," he said quietly. "But shadows only exist because of light." Ryland's voice came faintly through the comms, tired but alive. "What now, Captain?" Kalen's eyes hardened with resolve. "Now," he said, "the galaxy remembers who we are." Far away, on Earth, no one knew the battle that had been fought for their survival. Children slept beneath quiet skies, unaware that in the cold void above, their defenders had stood against the end and won. The galaxy had cast humanity aside. The Council had betrayed them. The Valari had sought to erase them, but humanity had risen. Humanity had endured. Humanity had struck like lightning. And from that day forward, one truth burned brighter than any star. No empire, no warlord, no betrayal could ever break the human spirit.